Scott Montesano. Let's get this turned up a little bit. I'm Scott Montesano, and this is where the Chippewa Valley comes to talk. Oh, I was a little low there for a moment. We got to get the Audible chocolate nice and hot for you today. Oh, a little chilly on this Thursday around the Chippewa Valley. The roller coaster, as you expect at this time of the year. A couple of good days, then a couple of bad days, and then a couple of good days, and hopefully over time more good days weather-wise as opposed to bad days in terms of temperature. Hey, happy opening day to those out there that are celebrating, yours truly included. My beloved Yankees began on Wednesday night. More so a national discussion, but we have every streaming service known to mankind at the Montesano Mansion, except we didn't have Netflix. I had to go buy Netflix just so I could watch Yankee opening day. Good purchase? No. Not fiscally responsible for one game, but it's opening day. I gotta watch it. It's one of those purchases that you'll quickly forget and just slap it on to the budget at the end of the year. Speaking of which, I got to update the budget here for Uncle Scotty at the end of the show. So plenty still to get to on this program, though. We're going to discuss a rather intriguing open-ended question that the city manager of Eau Claire posed. We got to get to an arrest of an educator in the Eau Claire Public Schools and what that might mean, and also what it should not mean. But do want to touch on quickly again, baseball opening day, and hopefully people out there are enjoying themselves, and maybe you know some people that went down to AmFam Field to watch the Brewers today, or maybe you're a Twins fan and watching on television. And I know a lot's being made. This is more so a national discussion than it is a local one. And remember, you're talking to a true sports aficionado here. I know for the Twins last year, people got used to it, and now Brewer fans are putting up with it. The games are, quote-unquote, harder to find now than they were before, but they actually are still, if you have Spectrum cable, yes, the games are not on, I think it was like 31, channel 31. But if you're going, I couldn't see the Brewers today, yes, you can. I think it's 327. The Brewers are now on 327. So the Brewers have their own online stream now, Brewers TV or whatever they're calling it. But there's a deal with Spectrum that now, instead of the games being on the old regional sports network, there's a channel dedicated solely to nothing but when the Brewers play. I think the Twins is maybe 319 or something like that, and the Brewer game is 327. Not that hard to find. So if you know somebody in your life who has Spectrum and they got the full package of all the channels and whatnot, and they're saying, I can't see the games, they just didn't find the channel. And I understand, by the way, people are going to go, well, how was I supposed to know? And you get frustrated, and there was no communication of it. And there is some truth to that. It's not easy to find. How did I find it? Well, last year, because I live in those 300s a little bit. The NHL network is there. And sometimes you find off-the-wall sports in the 300s. And I remember last year, by accident, I found the Twins, who last year left the local regional sports network and now do the TV broadcasts in-house. I found them there. And then today, not to throw them under the bus or whatever, but it shows you that even people that are into sports were frustrated. Justice Cleveland from WEAU was you could tell, almost in a panic on X, asking for help how to find the games. And I thought, yeah, I haven't really heard an announcement as to the Brewers starting up their own. I knew they started up their own channel, but yeah, you're right. I didn't really know. So I was like, let me go to the 300s And sure enough, there they are at 327. So the Brewers are there. And yes, it's. I think I touched on this a couple of days ago. Did I say it on the show, or did I talk to some other people with it? When it comes to our media consumption, remember, 10, 15 years ago, right at the heart of when people were getting satellite dishes, and there was all this talk of, I want to unbundle, and I just want to be able to pick my channels and whatnot. And as people were they wanted more a la carte, in came these streaming services, and the thought was, I'm going to cut the cord, and I'm going to game the system. And people started to cut the cord, and they would take certain streamers that they wanted that at the time were cheaper and all that. What has happened, what happened is the streamers now are investing much more in content, namely sports, because it's live and you have to watch it then. You can't just kick it down the road like a sitcom. It's appointment viewing. They've now invested in live entertainment. Costs money, gets more people to sign up and all that, so the costs keep going up. And now what you have is even more of a fragmentation than you had before when everything was just on cable. It will eventually coalesce itself again. It will. And I say this as a sports person myself. If you've got somebody in your life locally that says, I can't see every Brewer game, it's hard, I got this and that fixed income, and that's a lot of truth to that. Every game's on radio. Every game's on radio. But I want to watch. Hey, just a few years ago, you couldn't watch every single game. Again, you're talking to somebody who, there's not a single one of you out there that loves sports more than me. My whole identity is sports. I'm okay with missing a game and maybe just listening to it on the radio and do something else. It's okay. All right? It's okay. You will live. You will live. All right. I'm not saying you have to miss the game entirely. You can follow the game on your phone. You can listen to it on the radio. Baseball and the radio are perfect. All right, let's get to a couple of things today. Was just over at Memorial High School earlier today because they had one of those career day things put on by Junior Achievement, and they asked me to show up. I've enjoyed doing it at South Middle School. First time I had done it over at Memorial. You go and you speak and what have you. Enjoyed doing it. The thing I wanted to point out, when you go and you talk to the kids, and we were talking to freshmen and some sophomores, and you're supposed to kind of tell your story. Whenever I do this, I really don't tell too much of my story. I'm trying to energize the kids into, what are you interested in? And it's okay to dream. Because look at me, I live in the candy store. I'm somebody that has a very fun career. This is something I dreamed of. Maybe not in the exact way, but I dreamed of it and it happened. All right? It's kind of I dreamt of playing with toys, and that's what I get to do. And I want to encourage that dream, even if it seems wild what your dream may be, you can do it. If your dream is, I think I might want to one day be president. Don't swallow that dream and be, it's a far cry. Go for it. Who knows what may happen? So that's what I try to instill. You get some other people, God bless them, they go up there, and it's like they're trying to impress the kids. The kids can't be impressed. They don't want to be impressed. They don't care what your job really is. They're not going to be impressed. But I bring this up because I'm talking today, and the kids they're all glassed eyes, and they're deadpanned. They're not really all that interested in anything I've got to say. They laugh at some of my jokes. It is one thing I take great pride in. I am able to engage those kids more than some other people are sometimes. But kids, I saw this on maybe it was X a little while ago. A guy complained. He said, when you have these career things, and they weren't talking anything local, they were talking more generally. When you have these career things, we got to stop putting pressure on kids, teenagers, to map out their future. We got to stop doing that. There's too much effort put into mapping out your future. And it's a strong word, but I use it here. I hate that lazy way of thinking from people because I also think they don't quite understand the point. Kids don't need to know what they want to do. They don't need to know exactly what they want to do. They don't even really need to have an idea of what they want their life to look like. But we need to foster their dreams and creativity. And I do think you have too many pushing back on that. They say, I didn't know what I was going to do. That's not the point. Many people, when they're 15, 16, 17, don't know what they want to do. I could say I knew what I wanted to do when I was 13, but you know what? I'm not doing exactly what I thought I was going to be doing when I was 13. And I'm not just saying podcasts because they didn't exist. There's elements of what I dreamed of doing that I'm doing exactly that, but I've added so much more to that. But to those who say, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I was 15, why are we pressuring kids? You're not getting the point, you booger eater. You're not. The idea is we should be fostering dreams out of kids. And if kids don't have any motivation, we got to find something to give them motivation. If they're just plodding through life and not just taking things day by day, because you should take it day by day, but they really are day by day, and they have nothing that motivates them. We got to try to figure out something that does motivate them. What does get them up in the day? What gets them joy? What are their goals? And it could be from the mundane to the serious. If somebody says, hey, my dream is I just don't want to be here. I want to go see other parts of the country or the world. All right, how do we make that happen? How do we make that happen? If somebody else says, hey, I've grown up in a family where we've lived a lot of hand to mouth. Hand to mouth. I want to be able to make money that is sustainable. All right, it's about making money. All right, that's what's your motivation. You're going to get part-time jobs and all that. But let's try to foster whatever motivates you. If your motivation is survival and then hopefully getting a foothold and going beyond that, what can we foster out of that? That's what it is about. All right? That's what it's about. Now, speaking of schools, big happenings at Eau Claire North. News came out on Wednesday, the arrest of North special education teacher Nadia Horn. A potential child sexual assault investigation was started by the Eau Claire North School Resource Officer, and it led to the 22-year-old being arrested on Wednesday. Multiple potential victims identified, and she is subsequently suspended without pay. For those saying, why wasn't she fired right away? Well, we will see the justice system play out. We don't know exactly what she did. The fact that there are multiple victims identified raises the eyebrows even more. But even if it was just one, it is very much worthy of notice. So as I said, we'll let the justice system play out. Don't know anything about Nadia Horn. Maybe some of you know Nadia. We do not know anything of the circumstances that led to this or anything along those lines. What were the actual ages of the children? Was this one of those cases of it was consensual, but it's statutory, age differences? Do not know. Do not know. Doesn't matter. You and I do not know. The justice system will play out. What this is not, and this is why I bring this up, is this is not an opportunity to bang on either the Eau Claire public school system directly or any public school system. Because a lot of people, when something like this comes out, feel as though they've got to give an opinion. Well, there is no real opinion to give. Nadia is not guilty yet. The old innocent until proven guilty. And there are sometimes, many times, two sides of the story. And I'm not saying this to defend her. I'm just saying we do not know for certain. You and I do not know. I know it's painful. You and I do not know. Okay? We do not know. Because arguably, I hope, this sounds weird, I hope she didn't do it. Why? Because that would mean that nothing actually happened. I think sometimes people are hoping, I want to hear all the salacious details. No, you're hoping she's innocent. You idiots. You're hoping she's innocent. You want to know why? Because if she's innocent, it means nobody got harmed. If she's guilty, people got harmed. You don't want that. You don't want that. Oh, it blew your minds, didn't I? Too many of you are out there like, I hope to get the book thrown at her. I'd argue and say, maybe you don't. Again, I'm speaking for people that have no idea. You, me, 99% of the community have no idea. If anybody's listening and they know I know the story, that's a whole different thing. All right? But when stories like this come out, everybody wants to have their opinion, and typically the pound of flesh they're trying to get is, well, you can't trust people in the public schools. What do you mean by that? Unless someone can prove to me that the Eau Claire public school system missed red flags when they were hiring her, and I highly doubt it, there's no fault to be given there, at least as of yet. Now, maybe through the course of the investigation, we find out that warning signs were there, perhaps. But just generally, what we know now, not making any type of assumptions or anything like that to, try to create a currently false narrative that would support your means, your opinion. This is not a case of you see this and you go, see, they're all crazy there. They're all crazy in those public schools. Come on. Come on. Do not take the whole Eau Claire public school system down with you with this, and by that, any of the other public schools in the area. And again, lost in all this, and I want to keep going back to this, if something did occur, and again, we hope it didn't. That's still your hope. You hope it didn't. But if something did occur, may all of our thoughts and prayers go to the families, to the direct victims, of course, and their families. Because nobody should have to, because there is a trust factor that goes in, and that's a hard trust to regain. I know she's quote-unquote only 22, but she's an adult. With the trust of those kids in the school, trust of those teenagers in that school, and that trust broken, it's hard to regain that trust for those kids if something occurred. So may the thoughts, prayers, and I know that's such a cliche now, but there is truth to it if you do have real empathy behind it, thoughts and prayers to those. Even if something didn't occur, clearly something led to this as well. So it's definitely not a clean situation. The Eau Claire City Council presidency had the big forum on Wednesday. You can go back and watch it. I think EAU's got it. I forgot where I saw it. I think it's either EAU, you can find it recorded there, or through the Eau Claire Chamber. Either way, Jeremy Gregor against Scott Rogers. If you are pro Jeremy Gregor, I don't think you came out of that changing your mind. And if you are pro Scott Rogers, you came out changing your mind. I think neither one really was all that shocking. I heard some people that are very much pro Scott Rogers that pointed out things they noticed with Jeremy Gregor. I had I had some people making some rather funny comments with Jeremy Gregor's appearance. At the same time, I had some people that are leaning towards Jeremy Gregor and pointed out that they thought Scott Rogers came across as rather, as one person put it, snobbish. we've come out on this program on Tuesday and said I'm all for Scott Rogers at this point. I didn't see that. It's what prism were you watching it through? But I don't think anything really noteworthy came through out of that. What it's going to come down to, and what I've learned a little bit in the last 24 hours, there's a lot of support for Scott Rogers. There is a lot of support for Jeremy Greigert as well. And I asked somebody, why are you supporting Jeremy Greigert? Wanted to get their thought. This is not a business person in the area, but I wanted to get their thought. And the person said, because he'll have more empathy for those who need help. And I kind of poked just a little bit and asked, what does that person mean? And she said, well, he'll focus more on helping the homeless. He'll focus more on affordable housing. And I took a step back, and I didn't argue with the person at all. That's the way they look at it. But here's the issue. Those are things, as time goes on, we're quickly realizing are beyond the purview of a city government. The city government does not have the means or the mechanisms in place to fix the systematic issues that may result. And homelessness, by the way, frankly, by the way, that's a whole documentary right now when it comes to homelessness and housing insecurity, because it's not a simple thing. It's not a simple policy change that's going to fix anything. A lot of it is not just systematic. Some of it, more and more as there's more research, some of it is sadly by choice. Some of it is not. Some of it's by lack of motivation. There's so many different elements to it that no politician should be hired based on the idea of how they're going to address homelessness. Now, when it comes to housing costs in the area and all of that, I will ask, how do you think that Jeremy Greigert's going to fix housing affordability in this area opposed to Scott Rogers, who, I know it's been downplayed his experience with the Eau Claire Chamber. They try to separate the two, but the Chamber, more so than any city entity, I think the Chamber's been more tied into housing affordability in this area than you would think, because without housing and people being able to live in this area affordably, you do not have the workforce, and the lack of workforce at one point could blunt any bit of growth we have left. Now, whoever does win the city presidency will deal with Stephanie Hirsch. And the final thing we get to today is this. Stephanie Hirsch, earlier this week, we know the city budgeting crisis. Stephanie Hirsch, forget the mouth where the question came from, because it's a good question. If you keep thinking, oh, Stephanie that asked the question, it might really irritate you. But the question itself is a good one, and one we should all be asking ourselves in this area. And it's one we've all kind of thought of anyway. But do we as a community, because right now we are at the proverbial crossroads, what we want to do. A challenge presents opportunities for growth when you think about it. Do we want to be like, as she said, larger communities like Madison, which have nice amenities but higher costs, or maybe do with less but stay affordable? So again, do we want to be like larger communities? She called out Madison in particular, that have nice amenities but higher costs, or maybe do with less but stay affordable. I think it's an uncomfortable question, and for some it's an easy answer, but for most it's going to be muddied. Some of you will say, yeah, I want to, let's get whatever we can and we'll pay for it. Others will say, well, let's tighten up the old belt a little bit here. We're fine as it is. And I do think there's a lot of you out there are going to say, I want both. And to an extent, I think you can have both. You can thread the needle a bit. But it won't happen overnight, and that won't happen without some messiness either. I think it's a good question, and I think it's one that we have to have discussions amongst ourselves and in this community what we want. what we want. This area has grown by some 15,000 people since I first moved to this area. This is no longer, as I heard one person say 10 years ago, this is a big town. It's not a big town anymore. It is a city. Eau Claire is a city. It is a city. I think we have to have some uncomfortable questions like this. What do we want? And it's not just for people like me in our 40s. More so, people in their 20s and 30s are now the ones that are the next generation. And what do they want? As a community, we need to prioritize what matters. First off, you start with the nuts and bolts of what a city is. Roads, safety, that. Then from there, what is left? Then you can move it on to either the toys and the amenities, or do you want to focus more on social programs? Ultimately, we need to decide what we will have to accept. We might have to go without. Doesn't mean we will have to go without it, but are we okay with if we do lose X, Y, Z? Look at Chippewa Falls, for example. The community decided it did not want to go without the pool. There are other communities that would have let the pool die. We have to decide in this area, in Eau Claire, what do we want? The other thing is as well, and I had this discussion with somebody yesterday, maybe also, because there's people in the city that'll keep pointing at the state for being a problem in this, and the state's not without blood on its hands. But I think it might be getting closer. If you haven't already, we got to start pushing the state to really look at allowing municipalities to enact a sales tax, a city sales tax. Wisconsin is a state that does not allow it. There are other states that are Republican run, though there's also Democratic ones too that do this, that allow municipalities to collect a sales tax. It's not mandatory, but you look at in this area, let's just spitball it. Let's say you could have a sales tax. Altoona probably wouldn't have a sales tax. Not to throw, Brendan and Mike under the bus. They probably wouldn't. That'd be one of their calling cards. But Eau Claire, would. And it would create another bit of capitalistic movement. You might see some businesses move out of Eau Claire into Altoona to take advantage of the no sales tax. But for those that remain in Eau Claire, that's one of those ways that Eau Claire could make money off the fact it is the epicenter of the area. There are a lot of people that live in town of Washington, Lake Hallie, Altoona, that come to Eau Claire for various things. And not because, I'm going to leave town. Going from Altoona to Eau Claire is not like going from Eau Claire to Hudson for something. You don't even know really when you're crossing the line. We're all one big community. But a sales tax may very well help out. In fact, it would help out. Of course, the funny thing is, watch the state enact it at some point in the future, and Eau Claire votes it down. But again, the question, do you want to be like larger communities, or do you want to go without and be affordable? And I don't think it has to be an and/or type question. But I do think we need to really have discussions and prioritize at this point. We have to prioritize. And I heard a great thing today from somebody, not in the area but elsewhere, who said, and I do believe him, people are okay with paying more if they're getting at least the idea of more. I think that's important. People will pay more if they're going to get more. You cannot threaten people with, if you do not do this, you will lose it. Because all it does is it creates a then people immediately start going, how'd you screw up to put me in this position? Instead, if it's, hey, if we raise this up a little bit, it'll allow us to keep this, and maybe we'll throw this in. We're able to improve this part of it or whatever. It's one of those things, too, with the downtown parking. What am I getting out of the downtown parking being paid right now? Well, you get to keep the services. That's not good enough. You're not selling it that way. If you were able to tell me X, Y, Z we're going to be able to do now or that, it's a little easier to swallow. So part of it, too, is people will pay more if at least they're getting the idea that they're getting more. So, again, uncomfortable conversations. And there's going to be a lot of these forums going on the city is putting on, and a chance for you to give your direct opinions on it. All right, back with you next week for new editions of Talk of the Town then. On behalf of everyone who made this podcast possible, I'm Scott Montesano, saying there's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow shining at the end of every day. Make sure to take advantage of it, and until next time,